Okay, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker. So we have with us Professor Traian Truta from the University of Northern Kentucky. So today his talk will focus on privacy, and specifically he will talk about approaches for anonymizing social network. So this is a topic on which there is currently a lot of interest. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bertino. Thank you for inviting me here. The title of my talk is K-Anonymity in Social Networks, a Clustering Approach. I will start with the introduction to this problem. Why do we need to anonymize social networks? And a few reasons why we will do that. And then I will continue with a social network anonymization problem and the solution we proposed. And I will end with conclusion and future work. First, there is a lot of data in various formats today available for public use, for research use, and so forth. And this data contains a lot of sensitive information, medical information, and so forth. 10 years ago or so, most of this data was in traditional data models format, such as microdata, where each row belongs to an individual. But today, or more recently, the data models are varied, and they include location-based services, genomic data, data streams, and probably more common social networks. So the need of privacy in social network is very important today. Social network sites, all of you, or most of you are using the social network sites quite a lot today, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so forth. This is a definition of a social network site. All of you are familiar with it, so I wouldn't want to focus much on it. But the idea is it allows a profile which can be public or semi-public. And these profiles also contain relationship with other nodes in a social network. Those kind of social network can be navigated or viewed through those connections, so you will see the list of friends of a person and so forth. And this is the general definition of a social network, as I mentioned before. Now, the reason why we will need privacy in social network is that they might contain sensitive information. If you think about Facebook, Facebook may have sensitive information which you decide to post there, but you see, it's also your choice. Do you want to put this information or not? So it's a matter of choice based on each individual user. Still, there are many issues related to privacy in Facebook, because you may want to put that information for a very small number of friends, but they make it publicly available to other people and so forth. But even more important than social network, the privacy issues related to other type of social network are present nowadays, and I would mention a site which you might not be familiar with, Patients Like Me. Anyone have heard of this site? Nobody have heard of this site. So I just looked at this site again yesterday, and you can see here a definition or a short description of the site from Wikipedia. It's a data-driven social networking health site that enables its members to share condition, treatment, and symptom information in order to monitor their health over time and learn from real-world outcomes. And it started in 2006 with one community, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I never heard of this disease before I heard about Patients Like Me. And why this disease? Because one of the creators of this site, an engineer from MIT, had his brother with this condition. And he wanted to do something to help him. And he created this site, a community for people with this particular disease. Unfortunately, his brother died 1 year after the site was launched. But the community today, it's a very strong community. And in the next few years or so, other communities were created using the same model, which are mentioned here. And since April 2011, all conditions, diseases were allowed. All types of cancers and so forth. So now, let's talk about a particular type of disease. Let's say Parkinson's disease. people that have this condition may create a profile, and they can put all their information related to their diagnosis, their prognosis, their medication, and so forth. Why do they want to do this? Because by sharing this data and having information from other people, they may customize their treatment. For ALS specifically, nowadays there are more than 3,000 people in that community. 3,000 people, and I don't know, it's only a few thousands people sick with this disease in the United States. So 3,000 people is more than any hospital in the United States have ever treated by ALS. It's the largest community of people with that disease. And they share this information. So it's a lot of data available for the people, so they are enriched with this information and they can customize their treatment, and of course they can find new methods of treatment for them. So this is why they promote this sharing of data. Now, in terms of who uses patients like me, I already kind of mentioned that first are the patients. They can join and they can share the treatment and so forth. But this site can be used by healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, researchers. A researcher is an important category. I just read about a new drug which was developed in Italy, just a coincidence, for the same disease, ALS. And this new drug was supposed to improve the chances of remission of this disease for a few months or so forth. ALS is a terminal disease. The length of life after it is diagnosed is between 2 and 5 years. So a few months, that makes a difference. I don't know, like 6 months or so. And more than 1,000 people took that drug, and unfortunately, it proved that it's not valid. So that, but the study was done for a small number of people compared to more than 1,000 here. So it's a rare disease. So there are a lot of reasons to use this site besides just the patients sharing the data about themselves. But what is interesting about patients like me, they promote openness about the diseases of the patients. And the privacy policy provisions does not guarantee a member identity or authenticity of the data provided, but on the other hand, they do not have the same rules as other healthcare data, very strict privacy regulations. Why? Because patients like me are not a healthcare provider. They collect data from the user, which is provided by the user, but they do not provide any healthcare to those users. So what kind of data collects patients like me? Profile data and non-profile data. In this data, you can see that there is a lot of information like gender, age, location, city, state, photo, biographical information, and then treatment, of course, symptoms, and so forth. So it's very easy to identify an individual if you use gender, age, city, and so forth, even though some identifiable information, which is name and so forth, is a voluntary information. But providing age and city and gender, usually you can identify an individual. There are studies about that. So the data is, if someone wants to find sensitive information about individuals, this information can be found. Now, if you look at patients like me, you will see that some individuals even post their photos, so they do not care about privacy. But some individuals may still care to some extent about the privacy. They may still work, they may be employed, and they do not want to know their employer to find out about their problems and so forth. Now, because the site is not a healthcare provider, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is the law that regulates medical information in the United States, doesn't apply. And therefore, the site may provide anonymized data to drug, medical companies, non-profits, and research institutions for various purposes. So, Patients Like Me is a social network. Since the social network, why not anonymize the data first and provide this data to various companies and then allow them to do this kind of research on anonymized data, not on plain data. And that might be something that they might want to pursue in the future. So one of the reasons why we talk about anonymization of the data is because really there is this data, sensitive data in social networks that needs to be protected, and we want this data to be protected for various purposes. On the other hand, not providing this data in any form is not acceptable. It's a lot of value in the data, even if it's anonymized, and therefore it needs to be provided to third-party users. Now, let me go to a very easy example, and let's try to understand why we have this problem of sensitive information being revealed by a potential intruder or potential attacker. In a social network, we have relationships between individuals, which are depicted in the bottom of our screen, as well as profile data, or which is depicted on top of this slide. As you can see, in the profile data, we have some attributes such as name and age, name, age, zip, gender, and income. And those attributes usually are classified or into several categories, but you can easily see that name is an identifier attribute, and it must be removed before this data will be revealed to an outsider. On the other hand, age is not unique, so age could be kept theoretically in this data. Zip code also can be kept, gender, of course, as well as income. The problem with age, zip, and gender is that the combination of the three may still reveal data about some individuals if this data, if this combination is unique to an individual. If there is just one person with a specific age in one zip code and a specific gender, then that person will be revealed. The information about age, zip, and gender could be found in voter registration list or other type of data. So therefore, it's not enough to remove just social security number or name or address. You sometimes need to do more about other attributes such as age, zip, and gender. And we will see later those attributes are called quasi-identifier attributes. And why we want to do those modifications? Because at the end we want to protect the last attribute, income, which in our case we call it sensitive attribute, is the attribute that we want to protect. It can be another attribute like disease if we talk about medical data. Now, this is the initial data, and as I said, we also have network. Solutions to anonymize the initial data or initial microdata exist, and they involve usually a method or extension of this method called K-Anonymity. You may have heard of K-Anonymity, or you may not have. The idea of K-Anonymity is very easy. You create groups of K records that have the same quasi-identifier attribute information. In this example, the first three records or tuples, x1, x2, and x3, they all have the same combination of age, zip, and gender. As you can see, age is modified from 25, 25, 27 to the interval 25, 27. The same zip code is modified, gender is modified as well. Now, having this modification, you cannot know which one of the first three records is Alex, Bob, or Charlie. So this protects, to some extent, the sensitive information about Alex, Bob, or Charlie. But this method, which I explained, called K-Anonymity, is used to protect flat data or tabular data. Now, having the network, this might not be enough. And in this example, this is what we want to show, that having K-Anonymity for the profiles and still revealing the entire network will not be enough to protect the income of those individuals. Assuming that we have some external information that includes the following. Charlie has 3 contacts, so we know this information about Charlie, and we also know that Eva is a woman living in the zip code 41074 within this range, and who has exactly 2 contacts. Having this information about Charlie and Eva reveals something about the network structure of Charlie and Eva. Charlie has 3 contacts. That means Charlie can be only X3 if you look at the network, because the only node with 3 contacts is X3. Eva has 2 contacts. Eva can be X1, X2, X5, and X6. But going now to the profile, we still can reveal more about Eva, because we already limited our search to those individuals with two neighbors or 2 contacts. So whenever max data and network are disclosed, you will be able to find, as I already mentioned, that Charlie is the node X3, and for Eva, we will be able to also find that is the node X5. And that makes us to know the value for Eva as well as for Charlie in terms of what their income is. Now, a solution to this is to provide a modified version of the network, and we call this a masked social network. And what we have here, we combine several nodes into a larger node, super node, or whatever you want to call it, with some information, additional information. 3, 3 meaning 3 nodes, 3 edges between the 3 nodes within that cluster. And then between nodes here, we have, between the super nodes, this one and this one, we have an edge, and therefore this edge is labeled with 0. If we don't have an edge, we either can label an edge with 0 or we don't label it at all. It actually should not be labeled at all. But this kind of mass social network can be revealed, and if this social network, mass social network, will be revealed instead of the previous network, then none of the information revealed before, Charlie is the node X3 as well as Eva is the node X5, could be revealed. So this protects better the sensitive information in the social network. And coming from this example to a solution, we will move now and I will explain the problem setting, the full problem setting for our solution, as well as we will continue with defining how we will arrive to this mass social network, and the method to come out with a mass social network are called vertex attribute or attribute generalization and edge generalization. And then we will discuss some information loss measures, because we will obtain a social network. It's not enough just to create a social network, anonymized social network. You also need to provide some utility in this social network. So you want to have some information loss measures. And then, briefly, I will mention an algorithm to create this social network, anonymized social network called Sangria. First, the social network is modeled as a graph. Every graph has a set of nodes and a set of edges. Each node represents an individual entity, a social actor or a person. Each edge represents a relationship between 2 entities. Now, we do not allow multiple edges between the same individuals, so there are some assumptions here. So this is a simple undirected graph. Within every node, we allow attributes, which can be name, social security number, zip codes, diagnosis, income, and so forth. Those attributes are classified into 3 categories. The identifier attributes, which always must be removed from a masked social network. Then key or quasi-identifier attributes, which were in our previous example, zip code, age, as well as gender. Those are kept usually in a modified format in the mass social network. And this is exactly the previous example. You see the zip code is modified, age values are also modified, gender values are also modified through methods which are called in general generalization and suppression. And then the last category of attributes are confidential and sensitive attributes, which are, as example, diagnosis and income. Those are assumed to be unknown by an intruder. Graph edges, I already mentioned, are undirected relationship only. It's just one type of relationship, so we have just a relationship such as friends, but not different relationships. This graph edge structure, we consider it to be a quasi-identifier type, which means it can be known by an attacker from other sources. So it's similar to gender or to age. And we refer to this relationship as the quasi-identifier relationship in the future. Now, the easiest way to explain our model is through examples, and I will focus on examples, and the definitions I will usually skim over them in the next few slides. So our running example starts with this graph structure, 9 nodes. This is the connection between the nodes. We also have the same values that were before, age, zip, and gender. Now, I did not show here a sensitive information because our goal is to create groups of tuples that are undistinguishable from each other. So having a disease or an income as a sensitive information will not really help our example. But that's the only reason why I didn't include here the last attribute, sensitive attributes such as disease or income. Now, our goal, as I said, is to create groups of tuples that are indistinguishable from each other in terms of both quasi-identifier attribute values as well as structure, so neighborhood they share. And for this, we first apply a method called generalization, attribute generalization for nodes. In other words, we try to put together the values of age or zip or gender and to create the same generalized value for 3 of those nodes. Now, why 3? Because usually you select a target, how many nodes you want to be in the same group. And in our example, this number is 3. You can select a different value, 5, 10, 2. It must be greater than 1. In order to create a masked social network, we will use a generalization hierarchy. In other words, for gender, male can be generalized to nothing. Female can also be changed to nothing. For zip code, you can use 3-digit zip codes in between. So 48201 can be generalized to 482, and then you don't know the last 2 digits, and so forth. And what we have here are value generalization hierarchies in the bottom and domain generalization hierarchies in the top, and those are well known from prior work. Latanya Sweeney and Pierangela Samorati introduced them before. Now, our goal is to create, as I said, the K-Anonymity-like model. And K-Anonymity means you want to create those groups of K tuples that are indistinguishable from each other. And in our example, as I said, K is equal to 3. And what we want, starting from a set of nodes N, we want to create V totally disjoint cluster, CL1, CL2, CLV, such that every cluster has at least K nodes, and then in each cluster, all those node attribute values will be the same. Okay? And in order to realize this, we will use a node generalization process and an age generalization process. For the node generalization process, I already mentioned, we use these generalization hierarchies. What is novel in our work is the age generalization process, how we do to generalize the ages. And for this, we use 2 techniques together, intra-cluster and inter-cluster generalization. For intra-cluster generalization, the goal is once you create a cluster of 3 nodes or 4 nodes, then you provide for this cluster only the number of nodes in the cluster and the number of ages between the cluster. And this is what we mean by, in this formula over here, where is it? This one. So number of nodes, the number of ages in the cluster. As an example here, you can have this structure. And if you create a cluster for A, for example, A, you will have those 2 numbers are 3, 1. So 3 number of nodes, 1 is number of edges. For B will be 3, 0. For C will be 3, 3. For D, in this case, you create a bigger cluster with 7 nodes, will be 7, 7. Okay. Now, what is interesting about this diagram or this figure is that in case B or C, if you reveal the structure or you combine them into a supercluster, it's pretty much the same. Why? Because 3, 0 means 3 nodes, no edges between the nodes, so you can reveal the structure as well. The same in case C. 3, 3 means 3 edges, but the maximum number of edges between the 3 nodes is exactly 3. So you reveal everything. So 3, 3 or 3, 0 reveals everything. It's not the same with A. 3, 1, you still don't know which nodes are connected. And also with D, you don't know how the edges are connected. So what we say here, B or C, even if you reveal the structure, are still 3 anonymous, while A or D are not 3 or 7 anonymous, because you will reveal the structure if you reveal the structure, you will distinguish between the nodes. Now, what do we mean by edge intercluster generalization? You can have edges between nodes that now are grouped into different clusters. You want to still show those edges into the mass social network. So whenever you have this situation, you will connect those clusters with an edge, and you may have more than just one edge that connects clusters from one node with clusters from the second node. So you will also provide the number of the edges between nodes from different clusters. So as an example here, for this running example 3, this is the same as before. I just labeled them as 1, 2, 3, and keep going like that. So for this running example, if we group x1, x2, and x3 together, we will get 3, 3. If we group x7, x8, and x9, let me see, this is how, no, they are grouped x4, x7, x8. So x4, x7, 8, 8, we get 3, 2. x6, x5, and x9, we get 3, 1. But then we also create edges between clusters. And you can see here between those clusters, cluster 2 and cluster 1, you have one edge, and this will be actually edge between x3 and x7. But between the cluster 1 and cluster 3, there are 3 edges, because there are x7 is connected, let me see, yes, x4 is connected to x6, x4 is connected to x5, and x4 is connected to x9. So that's why we have 3 edges between those clusters. And the idea is to provide only this graph to a user. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to interrupt.
Question. Of course, you can come up with a lot of different clusters.
Correct.
Right? So you will address later on.
Yes.
That. Okay.
Yes. So Dr. Bettino mentioned correctly that you can come up with different solutions. Why choose this particular anonymization? Why not group x1 with x4 and x7? And different, so you can have many different ways. So you want to maximize the utility. Now, having this structure, I think it's clear at this point that in a cluster, nodes are undistinguishable between each other. Why? Because the structure will not distinguish between them. And in every cluster, as I already mentioned, the node attribute values for cluster identifiers are shared because are generalized. So nodes are undistinguishable between each other. So this will be a 3 anonymous mass social network. But the idea is, out of all possible anonymous social network that follows the 3 anonymity criteria, let's select the one that keeps more data utility in it. And for this, we will use several definitions that include generalization information of a cluster. What do we mean by generalization information of a cluster? How much information is lost when we generalize the node information? And then what we want, and this is just a definition, I don't want to get into details, we want to create a social network, which is mass social network, based on our selection of clusters, and this definition pretty much explains mathematically what this is. So the nodes are Mn and the edges are Me, and edges are also have values. As you can see, the nodes also have some labels as well. See the number of nodes as well as the number of edges in a cluster. Now, a mass social network, we call it K-anonymous if every node in the mass social network has the size of a list K. And as in our example, every node, every supernode has the size of list 3. Therefore, this is 3 anonymous. Now, let's focus on optimizing the anonymous social network through the information loss measure. So we want to measure how much information is lost. And for this, we have information loss caused by vertex attribute generalization and information loss caused by age generalization. Now, for this, we use two information loss measures, and we combine them later on. Generalization information loss says how much data details is lost through quasi-identifier attributes generalization. And structural information loss, how much structural detail is lost through the quasi-identifier relationship generalization. And just for being easier to compare them, we normalize them into the range 0 and 1. But in our examples, we don't normalize, as you will see. For generalization information loss, this is not a new measure, and it's actually a measure that Dr. Bertino with one of her students used before, Bune. So Dr. Bertino might be able to explain it better than me. No. Anyway, I don't want to explain in detail. What I want about this measure is, let's look at an example, okay? It's a lot more easier than that. And this part with normalized generalization information loss, we just bring it to 0 and 1. But let's look at the example, again, going to the previous example. We have x1, x2, and x3 in a cluster. So we want to generalize the value of ages. What do? Between 25 and 27, we create, this is the masked graph. So x1, x2, and x3 is actually the second example here. We have values 25, 25, 27. So the generalization for age is 25, 27, this interval. For zip code, we have 41076, 41075, 41076. The next in the generalization hierarchy is 3-digit zip code. So we generalize it to 410 star star. Okay? And then gender is all three are male. Therefore, this is what we have. 25, 27, 410 star star, and male. Now, how do we compute the generalization information loss? Well, we multiplied number of nodes in the cluster 3 times, and what is 2 over 13? 2 is the range of the interval 25, 27. 13 is the range of values, the minimum value for the whole data set, the maximum minus the minimum value. And we have between 38 and 25, so this is 13. Okay? This is how we compute the generalization information loss for an ordinal attribute such as age. Now, for the zip code, we have to look at the hierarchy. And we have 1 over 2 because there are only 2 levels in the hierarchy of the zip code, and we move up 1 level out of the 2. For gender is 0 because we don't change anything. And this is how we compute generalization information loss, pretty much. And all of this is a definition of what I mentioned in this example. Now, the second part, let me see where. Okay, it's about structural information loss, and this is novel to our work. We define structural information loss as the probability of error when attempting to reconstruct the structure of the initial social network from its masked version. And we have an intra-cluster structural information loss and inter-cluster structural information loss. Now, they are defined here, and it's, as you can see, it's a large formula for those one as well. But what is important for intra-cluster structural information loss? This is the probability of wrongly labeling a pair of nodes as an age or an unconnected pair. So if you take 2 nodes, what do you say? Is there an age or an unconnected pair between the 2 nodes? And you may guess, but the probability of labeling wrong is computed here. Okay? And finally, we come up with a formula that unites it's the number of pairs of unconnected nodes times probability of being considered an age, plus the number of edges times probability of being considered an unconnected node, really. And this is the final formula. Now, come up with the numbers here, and you will see that they make sense if you understand, in general, what this measure wants to say. We have 3 nodes now. We are talking about information loss in each individual node. For the first one, which is CL1, the bottom one here, we have 3, 2. The formula there, let me see here, I think the number are a little bit, let me see. Yes, the number are a little bit wrong. So the first one is CL2, okay? So the first one over here, let me show you here. Okay, so this one is 2 over here. So that is my typo here, and this is 1. This is 1, okay? So now it's correct. I just noticed notice it right now. Okay. So why the CL2 is 0? Because CL2 has 3 edges, and remember what I said in that example. When you have 3 nodes and 3 edges, you actually know the structure. So there is no information loss. If we apply our formula, we compute it and it's 0. It's exactly what we expected, correct? The same will be if the number of edges will be 0. So if the maximum number or minimum number, then it should be 0. But in between, that's where the numbers, because you don't know if there is an edge or no edge. And what you get, it's actually the same number, 4/3 for each. Why is the same? Because really, if you have 2 edges or 1 edge, you have the same probability of either having it wrong or right. Okay? In one case, what is right is wrong in the other. I mean, what is edge is not an edge in the other one. So if you have like a larger number, like a node with 20 values, then it will be a difference in having only 1 inner edge versus 10 inner edge. With 10 inner edge, the information loss will be larger than with 1, because 1 is, you are almost sure that there is no connection between 2 random nodes. With 10, you may not be as sure. And the maximum is just at the middle between the maximum number of edges and the minimum number of edges. Anyway, you also have a similar information loss for between clusters. For formula, it looks even more difficult, but it's pretty much the same idea. As examples here, we have 3 edges, actually 2 edges, and one is with 0 weight, therefore is not shown in this example. But let's compute the information loss between CL1 and CL2, as well as between CL1 and CL3. Between CL1 and CL2, the information loss computed with that formula is 16/9. Between CL1 and CL3 is 4. So it's more information loss between CL1 and CL3. But why? Well, let's look a little bit again at the number of nodes. In CL2, you have 3 nodes. In CL1, you have 3 nodes. So you can have the maximum of 9 edges. So having just 1 edge, it's very likely that 2 nodes will not be connected between the 2. While between CL1 and CL3, having 1 node from CL1 and 1 node from CL3, you are not so sure that the nodes are connected or not. There is a higher probability that the nodes are connected. Therefore, the information loss is higher. So this is exactly what our formulas capture. Now, why we come up with this normalized structural information loss? We just wanted to bring it to 0 and 1, and the maximum number is computed as n times n minus 1/4, so we bring it to 0 and 1. Now, in order to find a solution to our problem, we needed an algorithm, and the algorithm, unfortunately, is not an optimal algorithm, it's a heuristic algorithm, and even the K-anonymity problem with our social network is an NP-complete problem, so having a social network is definitely an NP-complete problem, so this is one reason why we didn't even try to search an optimal solution. Now, the anonymization algorithm puts together, of course, in cluster nodes that are as similar as possible with respect to both quasi-identifier attribute values and neighborhood structure. To do this, we use the normalized information loss, which is the one for node attribute values, but we had a problem. The problem with the structural information loss is that we can compute it only when we know already the clustering. We cannot compute it ahead of time. So if we start with the clustering, yes, we can compute it. But if we try to create our solution on the fly, we cannot compute it. And we use the distance function instead, because we notice that if nodes are more similar in terms of neighborhood, they must be grouped into cluster. And this will optimize the information loss measure. We notice this just empirically. Now, I don't want, because of time, as well as this is not extremely important, I don't want to go into details of the distance function. This is well known. It's actually from a data mining textbook, so it's not something extremely novel. So you can have the distance between 2 nodes compute based on the neighborhood, how much neighborhood is shared, and then the distance between the node and the cluster is just the average between those distances. The good part about this distance, you can compute it even while you are forming the clusters. And this is the criteria we use instead of structures, information loss in our algorithm. In our algorithm, the idea is extremely easy. We start with a social network, we start with a value of k, and we start with two user-defined weight parameters, which together alpha plus beta should be equal with 1. They pretty much weight how much importance we give to node structures versus node attribute values versus graph structure. And then we want to obtain a clustering. So partition into clusters such that every cluster has at least k nodes and so forth. Now, we start with one node, and then we, which is pretty much selected randomly, or it's not very important in this example, we select the node with the maximum degree, but even if it's randomly, the results are quite similar. And then, starting with that node, we keep adding nodes to, that node creates a cluster, and we keep adding nodes to that cluster until we reach the value k. How do we add a node? By optimizing this criteria, we look toward the node that adds the minimum amount of information loss in terms of both generalized information loss as well as the distance. And alpha and beta try to weight. If we look only at the generalized information loss, alpha will be 1 and beta will be 0. If we look only to the structure, beta will be 1 and alpha will be 0. If we want to use both, we use a value in between. And then we keep going until we have k elements. And then for the last cluster, we may be left with fewer nodes than k. We disperse this into other clusters to optimize again the information loss growth. Now, for this running example, we have run this algorithm with the first part is we optimize the alpha equal 1 means we look only to the node attribute values. Alpha equals 0, we look only to the node structure. So the left graph is the one that optimizes generalized information loss, and the right one optimizes the structure information loss. And we compute those values, and this is actually true. As you can see, the red one is the one that is optimized. For the first one, the value is obtained as 0.286 versus the second one, 0.529, and vice versa for the structural information loss, normalized structural information loss. And you can see here we have worked through examples for the first graph. Generalized information loss, you may remember those numbers, 2 over 13 plus 1 over 2 plus 0 from here. This is exactly what we discussed before, as well as 4 over 3 or 16 over 9 and 4. Okay, so that's those are the numbers we worked through with. We have run some experiments using adult data set from UC Irvine Machine Learning Repository, and we have used this data only for node information. This data doesn't have structure. We created structure using a graph generator called GTGraph, and we use two different models, random graph generator and power law distribution and small world characteristic. We call this an RMAT generator, and those laws usually models better a social network. And we run our algorithms only for 300 nodes, so it's quite a small number initially. And we also fixed some parameters when we generated those graphs, 10 for random graphs, and only 9.52 for RMAT, because RMAT duplicate ages. And when we remove this, we are slightly below 10, the average vertex degree for random graph. And then we run the Sangria algorithm for various values. And why we use here the 10 Zeleva? Because Zeleva have used a similar algorithm, but where she never referred to structure. She used only node attributes to create the clustering. And therefore, when you use just the node attributes values, this is equivalent with an existing algorithm already proposed by Zeleva and Liz Gator from the University of Maryland. Now, the results are we expected. We run results for various values of k. As you can see, when alpha is equal 0 versus alpha equal 1 or Zeleva, NGL is higher for alpha equal 0 than for alpha equal 1, just because we do not use NGL in alpha equal 0 only when we use alpha equal 1. So it's exactly what we expected. For structure information loss is the reverse. Alpha equals 0 means we use just the structure and we don't use the node information. Therefore, those values are lower. And the results for random graph as well as for RMAT graphs are quite similar. So this motivates that our solution works for different types of graph models. Now, in terms of future and current work, we are investigating currently how those anonymized social networks can be used for other problems in terms of are they useful for various usages. And we are currently working on privacy-preserving assessment of social network data trustworthiness, and this is a joint work with Dr. Elisa Bertino, Chen-Yun Dai, and Feng-Yu Rao from Purdue University. And the idea is that an owner of a local social network may have access to one or more anonymized social networks, as explained before, and they can even be anonymized using a different model than what I had on those slides. And then the owner of the social network is able to compute a trust score using each social network individually and then combine those trust scores such that it will reveal whether some individuals in a social network will have information which is non-trusted. So we'll just fake some information. Here is a little bit of explanation about those trust scores. So if someone wants to lie in their profiles, this method may reveal that they faked their profile. And we are performing some experiments right now about the utility of those trust scores. As concluding remarks, there are still many open privacy questions in various areas, not just in social networks, and they are not well understood. And sometimes, as I explained in the patient like me example, those privacy questions sometimes are even very difficult to address, because by providing privacy, you provide a service. By not providing privacy, some other people may be helped by this. So it's a trade-off problem, really, in many different fields. So there is no standard anonymity preserving problem setting model or method. There are various models. Now you may have heard of differential privacy that is used for preserving privacy of the data. But the main problem that still exists is that there is a large gap between research, theoretical results, when I mention research, are all kinds of theoretical results, and their use and implementation in real-life application scenarios. And this is definitely an ongoing work that happens in the data privacy community. And really, what I have here at the end are just a list of references. Most of the work was presented in references 5 and 6 with Alina Campan. And other references are also listed here. And this is really all. So if you have any questions.
Please, okay, first of all, let's thank the speaker. Do you have questions?
So if I am a researcher who's trying to use an anonymized social network using your algorithm, would the information loss measures be published with the graph, and how should I use those to talk about the accuracy of any conclusions that I might have made with your data?
Well, this is a good question, and honestly I never thought about if publishing information loss will reveal a large extent. If it's just the information loss for a large graph, I don't think it will be any major problem to publish. But I definitely didn't do this kind of research to publish those values. I don't expect that that will reveal anything. But in terms of using the graph, I don't think you will use it based on the information loss value. You will need to apply some other techniques. For instance, you may want to do some kind of, we discussed about it with Dr. Bernino before, some kind of data mining on the anonymized graphs, or you may want to do some kind of social network analysis on the social graph, and then you use those kind of results. The main idea is you need to have some kind of certainty that the results are still valid, and that's still an ongoing work.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Actually, I may add a comment. Was a very good question. So, concerning publishing the information loss, I think in general you can assume that the attacker, let's say, who tries to get private information will know the domain. So we'll know, for example, the possible values for zip code anyhow. So, which means he can infer by himself the information loss anyhow. But I think nobody really mentioned in any paper whether those are published. But I think that, for example, when you don't see the gender is replaced by a star. It's easy to say either it's female or male. So anyhow. About their use, there is an interesting connections in databases. There is the notion of uncertainty in databases, where you record the information, but you have a probability in which you say this data is certain, some uncertainty. And in a way, this could be used also here, so that when you do some tasks, you know how much confidence you could use in the result. Now, as Professor Truta mentioned, some years ago I was very curious about how can we use this anonymized data. The answer is it depends on what you need to do with them. So I said, can we use them to do data mining on top? So we get anonymized data and we suppose I want to derive a classifier. So my question is, would this classifier be good? We did a lot of experimental results, and the results were that the classifiers that you extract are actually quite good for anonymized data. The reason we found was that anonymization removes noise from the data. And that's why we got a very good result. But again, that was an experimental conclusion. We didn't have any good theory. In a way, you could say, well, I don't lose any important information. It would be nice to look at this from an information theoretic perspective. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Other questions? Okay, so in any case, we do some work in our group with Professor Truta, so perhaps next year we'll have another seminar with the other results. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.